Hi everyone, Spicy Sushi here. So, throughout Ritual, I had a lot of people in the comments asking what League starter I played to build up all the currency to afford a Headhunter, as well as my magic finding build, as well as the map setup to transition into my magic finder for Fractured Towers, for example. Well, that's why I wanted to create this video. I wanted to create not only like a guide, but mainly an overview of this Vortex Occultist that I've played for about 5 leagues and about over 800 hours of gameplay. The reason I've put so much time into this build is because I found it to be extremely reliable, as well as a very relaxing playstyle. And it fits pretty much all the needs I have for a league starter, which is to clear basically the entire game and build up a lot of currency quickly to transition into, my mapping strategy or to afford, the next build I want to make. So this is not just one build technically. This is more like 2 different play styles of the same build, Vortex Occultist. And those 2 play styles are Cold Slinger, which is based off of Clyde Hart's Cold Slinger Occultist, and Self-Cast Vortex, which is based off of Shaq Central's Vortex for Everyone. Now, I'm going to include both of their forum guides in the description, so you can go to either of those if you want to get more info. But basically, this is going to be an overview of how I synthesized these 2 types of playstyles to create, one general league starter. So I use both builds, but I switch in between them based on my needs because it's extremely easy to switch between these 2 builds, which we'll go over. But for Ultimatum, I would definitely recommend playing Shaq Central's version, which is the Self-Cast Vortex Occultist, because it is an extremely tanky version of this build. And I think it will be the best way to play this build to basically guarantee that you're going to get to these very high reward tiers in these ultimatums and do these challenges. Because what you're watching right now is the Cold Slinger, the Spell Slinger variant of the build, which is much faster and does output more damage later on as low life, but it's not going to be nearly as tanky as Self-Cast. But it is a playstyle that I'm going to put out there and I'm going to include in this guide in case you want to play it. So in this guide, after this gameplay, I'm going to go in a lot of detail into the path of buildings, as well as a very in-depth Google Doc that I've created that's going to go over exactly how I upgrade, how I play this build at a league start, all the way from the Axe to T16 maps. So the Google Doc is going to go over the order of upgrades that I buy, what uniques I buy when, like day by day, what I upgraded, what I crafted, and how I, basically got to the different power spikes that you need to for this build to really work as a reliable league starter. So basically, what content is this build good for? So the best content that this build is good for, in my opinion, is actually farming simulacrums. It's probably the most relaxed simulacrum farmer I have ever played. I put on Netflix and I just sit back, watch like Attack on Titan, whatever I want to watch, and I just basically go AFK, just running in circles, killing everything and collecting loot. But it's really good for Harbinger farming. It's really good for Guardian's Aid, Shaper, and Elder Guardian farming, as well as like maybe rotating into Uber Elder farming. That's what I did week 1 of the League of Ritual. I rushed straight to Guardian farming as well as Uber Elder farming, and well, in that was also Shaper and Elder farming. So the build was pretty excellent at that because of how tanky it was and how cheap it was to get started, which let me do that like day 2 of the league, or it was more like day 3. But basically what you're watching here is the Self-Cast version of the build. Instead of shooting projectiles that spawn basically vortexes, frost bolts, and creeping frost projectiles, you're just dropping vortexes under your feet, and you are using Cold Snap on right click. so which generates frenzy charges, puts out some more damage, and also has a Vol usable skill that gives an AoE around you. So basically, this guide is very new player friendly, or this build is very new player friendly, because let's say maybe you've had issues in the past with following League starters where you hit a wall when it comes to damage and you just don't know how to progress. You don't, you feel like you're following the guide, but it's just like, you're just not putting out the damage that you think you should be. You're hitting massive walls, you're getting frustrated, you don't know what items to buy, you don't know if you're doing something wrong. Well, basically, this build has very easy to understand power spikes. There are very distinctive power spikes that are going to be where the majority of the damage comes from. There are going to be items that you buy, and the Google document that we're going to go over is going to completely cover those. But it's very, very simple to understand where the power in this build comes from. So the easiest way to do this build is to level through the axe as Cold Slinger Occultist, as a hybrid life and energy shield build, and after you get out of the axe, to collect energy shield based gear to transition to Chaos Inoculation. Now, Chaos Inoculation is basically going to set your life to 1, and it's going to make you immune to chaos damage. So when you switch to the CI, you're going to spec out of life nodes, like most life nodes besides life ES hybrid nodes, and you're going to just go straight energy shield. And you're going to become extremely tanky because of this, and you're also going to be able to just focus on energy shield gear. Now, when you transition to CI, that's when I recommend dropping Cold Slinger and switching into Self-Cast Occultist, which, again, that's what you're watching right now, is Self-Cast Occultist. It's going to be very tanky for Ultimatum. It's going to be very reliable for doing what you want to do. And it's going to be, in my opinion, the best way to play in Ultimatum probably the entire time. So Cold Slinger might be just reserved for leveling if you want, or you could honestly just push Cold Slinger to the end game. It just depends what you want to do. So what you're watching right now is another Cold Slinger version of this build. It's using Frenzy instead of Power Siphon. But it works just as well. It puts out more damage than Self-Cast. It is just less tanky. But basically, we're going to go a lot more in depth. Don't worry, I'm going to definitely cover pretty much everything in the Google Doc and also in the path of buildings. So I will catch you after this Maven kill. This is one I did deathless last league. You can see the YouTube video. I did this very early on in the league. It was a little bit low damage because I was experimenting with CI. I was trying to make CI into basically almost as good as low life, which wasn't really possible. But yeah, after this Maven attempt, I'll catch you in the path of building next. All right, so let's go get into the path of building. So as I said before, this will be leveled Act 1 through 10 as Spellslinger. With Spellslinger, we basically will link Frostbolt as well as Creeping Frost to Spellslinger setups, and then we will use Power Siphon or Frenzy starting in Act 3 to trigger those. And we will be using Vortex on left click. So whenever you're casting Vortexes, they will be cast under the Frostbolts that are fired. But this path of building I've created for the leveling setup is going to go through, basically you'll click down here where Act 1 is, and you can click through all the acts I have layered out, what I prefer taking as I level. And you'll notice in Act 5, we put in the Frozen Trail Cobalt Jewel that you get from the quest. So this will go all the way to Act 10. I progress the Ascendancies as follows as well. And then if you don't switch to CI just yet, it goes up, the path of buildings will go up to level 77 as without switching to CI. So it takes some life nodes over here. And but around level 80, I would look to switch to CI if you have not yet. So in the notes tab though, I have a full leveling notes set up from Clyde Hart's forum post. I just copy pasted them over here. So credit to his guide. This will just get you through the leveling process. But yeah, I created these 10 acts of leveling, this leveling guide. So next up, we're going to get into the bulk of it, which is the main path of building that I created. All right, so here is the main path of building that I wanted to go over with you. So down here, if you see, I have created 5 trees for this path of building. It will have a CI level 80 or 81 tree. This is basically going to be your super early game tree as soon as you switch to CI, which is what we're looking at here. There are no clusters required at all. And over here, I even have the budget CI gear setup. So if you just want to see some examples of some budget gear, these were taken from Shack Central's setup for budget CI. And then these flasks, you can just pick whatever. This is basically what you're going to be working with very, very early on. But then here is a late game CI tree. This is level 93 CI. If you just don't want to switch to low life for whatever reason that is, or you just don't feel confident in switching to low life, because low life you do drop a lot of tankiness, so it does make sense to maybe want to stay CI, especially this league and Ultimatum. So I have this tree set up as has these clusters. You don't have to do clusters. For example, in the low life no cluster tree, there are no clusters involved in the first low life switch. But here's the CI for if you want to use cluster jewels to really increase the DPS. Now, if we go over to the items for late game CI, I have already placed those in. This is basically what I would be running late game as CI. CI does get a little complicated because with the Ascendancy, you do want to take Profane Bloom eventually, because Profane Bloom is your main, it really, really helps with your clear. But as CI, it's hard to fit in a Blasphemy aura, because Blasphemy is a way to reserve your curse as like an aura, and basically it'll curse everything around you, which is really important for the self-cast version of this build, which is what we're switching to. So for CI, the way I get over that hurdle is you want to be on the lookout for a curse on hit ring. This will just curse enemies with frostbite, so you don't have to use Blasphemy, because unlike low life, CI, you don't have life that you can reserve. So and we don't really have enough mana to be reserving curses as auras unless you want to go super budget. So we use a curse on hit ring to get over that, so we can still get the benefits of Profane Bloom. But yeah, here's this setup. The main setup is really low life. This is going to be when you switch to low life that I've created. We're going to assume that you don't use cluster jewels with this early low life switch. But in the skills here, I have gone over everything. So these are always enabled, Vortex and Cold Snap. And then you want to, let's say you've switched to low life, so you're going to use low life, no cluster jewels. You can go over to your skills, and basically we select, see, this is for low life, we're going to enable that. Auras for low life, enable that. And then yeah, so there you go with that. And basically you'll be able to keep track of your DPS over here. This is optimized for Cyrus DPS, I believe. Yes, so this is Cyrus DPS with Vortex, 2.1 million when you switch to low life, as well as 615k on Cold Snap. And this assumes that you've gotten your trigger socketed spellcraft on the wand. I'll be going over my entire process of acquiring those items though in the Google document. And But what I recommend for Ultimatum is definitely either going to be, if you want to do like maximize your survivability for Ultimatum content, I would either recommend going tanky low life or end game CI. So with tanky low life, I've created an item setup that basically drops Prism Guardian, adds in a titanium spirit shield with recover ES on block, and you can go through the items on the path of building. But basically, this setup is going to keep some damage, but it's going to maximize your tankiness. So with the tanky low life setup, we have Blasphemy Enfeeble with Malevolence, but we also get Aspect of the Spider. Yes, in the tanky low life setup. So we have Aspect of the Spider, Enfeeble, as well as Frostbite Curse on Hit Ring in order to have enough mana to reserve Enfeeble. And then we have to drop, we have Flesh and Stone and Discipline, but we have to drop Hatred and Zealotry, which is normally seen in low life, which you'd see in this setup. And then if we switch to the late game CI, this is another Ultimatum variant if you want to be very tanky in Ultimatum, but you will lose some damage and you will lose some tankiness compared to tanky low life. So I have in-game CI here. And yeah, that seems to be about it. Oh, and a final note, if you do not have a trigger craft on your wand yet, this is why this is here. You can enable this, because basically you're just going to use Orb of Storms, Frostbite, Hex Touch. Whereas if you were to normally have a trigger wand, you would have Orb of Storms, Frostbomb, Stormbrand. You always want to end this order because you want the Orb of Storms to go out to start hitting with lightning damage, Frostbomb to go out, hit with some cold damage, but apply exposure. But then Stormbrand is going to go out and continue hitting with lightning, so that your damage over times get that elemental equilibrium benefit. Yeah, let's head over to the Google document so I can show you what that's about. Hey everyone, so this is going to be the Google document that's going to be included in the description. It is going to be a very detailed overview on how I league start this build, how I upgrade this build daily at a league start, and how I transition it from very early maps all the way to T16s as well as in-game. So this Google Doc, it's going to include the path of building links that we talked about. It's going to include a short little description on the pros and cons of Cold Slinger and Selfcast, as well as overall cons and overall pros of the build. So definitely click on this in the description and just read through that and figure out if it is something that you'd want to do. But this is the main chunk of the Google Doc. This is going to be this is what I've spent a lot of time on, and this is going to be what you definitely want to look at as you're playing the build. You're going to want to come back to this Google document and pretty much just keep up with what I did for upgrades, because in my opinion, this is the best way to upgrade the build. So I included day 1, day 2, day 3 as a way to just to show you guys like what I'm looking for day 1 of a league or day 2 of a league. But I definitely understand that not everyone's going to be doing this day 1 or day 2, but this is just to show you what I did day 1, day 2, day 3, and onward. But I also included the play time for each day, so that may be a little bit more, you may be able to get a more understanding on like at what hours played you could be looking for these upgrades. So basically, it's going to include things like what I did day 1 was one of the first things I got after finishing the campaign was I bought a Rhyme Gaze, and I got my flasks, Centrex or Rainbow Strides. Like day 2, I include notes on what I did at the beginning of the day, like how I looked for a wand, and I have trade links. I have trade links to everything. So let's say like day one, I wanted a spell damage one with cold dot multi. That was the first thing I did outside of maps, or sorry, that's the first thing I did outside of the axe. So what you're going to see here is when you click on this, any of these embedded linked words, you're going to be able to click on a trade link, and it's going to take you to pathofexile.com/trade. And it's going to show you wands that I filtered, basically the exact same thing that I filter when I look for wands for this build. Now, this is going to update to the new league, is what I've heard. If it doesn't, I'll be sure to change each of them, but it should search the current league that we're going to be in. So it does this for like Rhyme Gaze. I look for a Rhyme Gaze with decent cold dot multi. This is a headpiece that you'll want to get early on because it's very strong and cheap. But you'll click on that link, it'll pull up Rhyme Gazes. You'll see even in the filter, it already has selected decent cold dot multi for you, so you don't have to worry about filtering that. So you could just have this Google Doc bookmarked, and you can click on it, and whenever you're getting some currency and ready for some upgrades, you can, I'm gonna have these linked, these flasks filtered and linked when I post the video, but like you can just say, okay, I have some currency, what's the next upgrade that Spicy did? Looks like he got Rainbow Stride, so you can click on the link and it'll search Rainbow Stride for you. But yeah, so it'll go through all of these notes. I have included notes on the side, so I do recommend going through those as well. These are basically the yellow highlighted. It'll pop out the note that I have for this. But yeah, this goes all the way till day 4. And it's going to go all the way to afterward, week 1 to week 2, which is just what I did the rest of the time that I was building up currency. Like the last upgrades that I got on this build to where I stopped and decided to start building up currency for a headhunter and my magic finding build. And I also include a little section where I min-max, like just min-max section if you really like this build enough to where you just want to play this the entire league and you want to min-max it. I have included a little bit of that. I have never min-maxed this build before, so I'm not too knowledgeable on that, but you can check Path of Exile Ninja for people that are min-maxing this build. And at the end, I've included some ascendancy notes. These are just little insights that I have when it comes to the ascendancies. But yeah, so hopefully this helps you guys out a lot. I might include a Discord. I might make a Discord just for like people who want to ask questions about the build. You can also just catch me on twitch.tv actually to ask questions about the build as well. But hopefully this helps out a lot. I spent a lot of time on this, so I really hope it is helpful for you. I'm not the best teacher when it comes to builds, but I did try my hardest with this. So I will catch you guys in the next video, which is going to be League Start strategies. But thank you so much for watching. Please, if you want to keep up with my content, like and subscribe. And I will be streaming every single day almost of the first 2 weeks of this league. So of Ultimatum. So I'll catch you guys later. Thank you.